Let's talk about wildlife and how urbanization can change it.
When you think of Atlanta, you probably think about the buildings, restaurants, roads, and traffic. You probably don't consider the fact, though, that the area is historically a deciduous forest.
Now let's talk about the correlation between urbanization and a change in squirrels' behavior.
So when you think about it, wildlife in these very biodiverse deciduous forests didn't have to deal with impervious surfaces like concrete buildings and sidewalks. They instead had dirt and trees that fulfilled their needs or their ecological niches. Animals still inhabiting cities, like the eastern gray squirrel, have been changed as a result. Since the landscape has been urbanized, their interactions with potential predators is changed, which impacts their vigilant and alert behaviors. I'll call these tenacious behaviors. Given this, there's an inverse relationship between urbanization and biodiversity. The more gray, the less green. The less green, the less biodiversity. We can hypothesize that squirrels will exhibit less tenacious behavior because of this relationship. Nonetheless, large physiological changes among species take generations to take course, so we can assume that in 2025, there will be more tenacious behavior, but it will just not be a night and day difference between tenacious behavior and non-tenacious behavior. Meaning that these squirrels are likely to still be vigilant, but not as vigilant as they should be, as they would be in a deciduous forest habitat. For 10 consecutive weeks, I went out to the same location and saw a focal squirrel. I recorded weather, time, coordinates, etc. After this, I set a 5-minute timer identifying the behavior of the squirrel when I could observe it. Otherwise, I marked NA when it was not visible. For this research, in RStudio I conducted code that would take the ethograms data and filter out non-useful data. Non-useful data was any data that did not have other animal species present during the examination or the observation period. This is because we're testing the tenacious behavior of the squirrels around other animal species. Also in RStudio, I created a bar graph to represent the difference between tenacious behavior and non-tenacious behavior. The results support that there is more tenacious behavior around other animals in the urban location of Georgia Tech. A chi-squared stats test also produces a very low p-value, which means the likelihood of random chance influencing the results is very low. However, we have to admit that Georgia Tech is an anomaly when it comes to green space in urban settings. There's not that many places that have rooftop gardens like at the Candida building, or much greenery and trees around the campus like Georgia Tech does. However, a similar study by Jayne had similar results in a different location. Therefore, there's uniformity and shared results between two different locations, which supports a representation of squirrel behavior in cities.
Now let's talk about the solutions. We can rally for policies to be created by voting and creating more green infrastructure being implemented in our new buildings and existing buildings. We can implement things like rooftop gardens like on the top of Candida. More of those can help mitigate the effects of climate change, which can all trickle down on squirrel populations and their behaviors and biodiversity as a whole. We want to increase that in cities. Why is this even an issue though? From what we can presume, based on ecological factors, if they're less vigilant, less tenacious, they're more likely to be susceptible to their predators, and if they're easier to catch, they're going to be easier to wipe out completely.
Animals still inhabiting cities like the eastern gray squirrel have been changed as a result. What the